Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, coming up this year with MW3 and Warzone, we are going to see our next major integration update, one that, as we've discussed in the past, is arguably going to be the single most game-changing integration that we've ever seen. In early December, alongside the launch of Modern Warfare 3 Season 1, we are going to see the launch of quote-unquote Warzone 3, if you want to call it that. It's still just going to be Warzone, but it's going to be the MW3 version of Warzone, similar to how back in Warzone 1 we saw Cold War and Vanguard integrate into what was MW 2019 Warzone. However, this year things, like I said, are going to be a bit different. Not only is this seriously game-changing, but also things have been put in place to make this one of the best possible integrations in theory. So today we're breaking down how these changes should be setting up a lot of success or potential success for the future of Warzone. As we get into it, if you enjoy the video, if you find it helpful and informative, do me a favor and drop a like on it. It really does help the channel grow. And if you're new here or you simply haven't subscribed yet, let's change that, because every single day I got you covered with literally everything going on in COD, news, updates, leaks, meta breakdowns, you name it, it's all right here. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But as we know, when you talk about Warzone integrations, I imagine most of you probably don't have the most positive connotations and associations with that idea, because quite frankly, their track record for integrations is not great. Warzone 2 in and of itself is not an integration. It's basically technically a full new game, and we know that in the eyes of a lot of players, it was a step back from what Warzone 1 was in terms of its core gameplay mechanics, movement, gunplay, everything like that. Not nearly as successful. But dating back to Warzone 1, obviously that's where things got a little bit, troublesome, I guess you could say, when it comes to the integration updates. MW 2019's version of Warzone, the original Warzone 1 with Verdansk and only the MW 2019 guns, oftentimes considered peak Warzone for a lot of players, whether that just be because of the state of the world or the gameplay experience or whatever the case may be there. But it was obviously very smooth and very fun. It's not to say it was a flawless game by any means. There were still a lot of bugs and a lot of glitches. You know, the demon glitch was always a problem. The stim glitches were huge. Hackers, obviously a major problem back in the day, but for the most part it was working, I guess you could say. I want to emphasize for the most part though, because like I said there were some definite standouts that were not great. But then we approached the Cold War integration, the first ever time Warzone was going to extend into a new year with Black Ops Cold War. And when the Cold War integration happened, obviously things did not go well. If you recall, everything about the Cold War integration was broken. Now, the MW 2019 stuff still worked. You know, you had your guns there, you had your operators there, where you're still playing on Verdansk. That was all fine and dandy. You look at the Cold War stuff though, initially none of the attachments did what they said. We had to data mine and go through and manually test and have huge, super in-depth detailed videos saying, hey, this barrel that says it's better for range and better for control actually increases your velocity and your fire rate and destroys your ADS. And this suppressor doesn't do that. And this optic is actually bugged. And this rear grip doesn't do that. It actually does this instead. Nothing when it comes to loadouts was correct at all with the Cold War gun. We also had things like DMR zone, arguably the scariest time in Warzone history, and that's saying something because we've had some cool haunting events where the DMR was just wreaking havoc on everyone, an incredibly broken gun that lasted for weeks because the devs were on holiday break. It was not a good scenario whatsoever, and it took several seasons for the Cold War integration to actually get sorted out and run smoothly. So the first ever integration, not really that seamless. And then you look at Vanguard, and I don't know if you could say things were worse, but they definitely weren't better in many cases. The Vanguard integration happened, and it just broke the game in general. We shifted over to Caldera, and console, as Xbox in specific, like couldn't play the game for almost 2 months straight, if I remember correctly, with the crashing issues, texture issues where the map wasn't loading, the demon glitch was happening like crazy. You couldn't pick up guns. Enemy players were looking like messy blobs. It was a mess as well, and it took several months for them to sort that out. And the state of the game at the start of the Vanguard integration might have been one of its lowest in Warzone 1 history. So like I said, the track record for their integration updates is not great. But this year things are a bit different because dating back to Warzone 1, you were working on the MW 2019 engine, Cold War being developed on its own engine, so that integration inherently had problems directly because of that. Vanguard, while it was similar to the original Warzone 1 engine, wasn't one-to-one, and it still experienced issues because of that. But now here we are with Warzone 2, and as we get into MW3, everything is now working off the same unified shared engine across the board, and obviously gameplay with that is going to be a lot more seamless and a lot more smooth because the game at its core functions the same across the board, and this will extend to Call of Duty 2024, COD 2025, until whenever they upgrade to their next version of their engine. Things are going to be more seamless right out of the gate because they're not having these huge crossovers with systems that might not function together at their core. So while yes, when you look at gameplay of MW2 and MW3, the games are drastically different. Obviously, MW3 weapons work different in terms of control. We've got a majorly different movement system with slide canceling and tac stance and this, that, and whatever else. They're not the same game by any means, but at their core, they were built from the ground up in the same way, just in different directions, right? In terms of design. This means that when the MW3 integration takes place, in theory, it should not be nearly as disastrous as in the past. I'm sure there's going to be bugs and glitches because let's face it, every single Call of Duty update introduces new bugs and glitches, especially the major ones. But from a game-breaking standpoint, unless something goes terribly wrong, the protections and the precautions now have been put in place with the shared engine and with the continual content year over year, the carry forward, whatever you want to call it. This stuff is basically being implemented now to have the most seamless integration possible so that it's as smooth as possible and doesn't experience these major hiccups that all the integrations of the past have experienced. So that in and of itself is very good news. But of course, all of this is currently just in theory. This is how we're perceiving it as it's intended. In execution, we're gonna have to wait and see how things go. It could go as intended. I feel like rarely it does, though. I'm sure there's going to be some bumps in the road. Hopefully, though, they're not major bumps. They're small little speed bumps like in the parking lot and not, you know, a crater that we have to go over. So, terrible analogy. It is what it is. At the end of the day, however, this is going to be the most seamless from the ground up integration that we've seen before, and the first time we're ever going to have an integration like this in Warzone history in terms of the connections between the two games themselves, at least at a core level with the engine and whatnot there. So it should be different from the past. Hopefully it is, and it all plays out how it should be. Of course, as we get closer and closer, we're going to get more official details on the integration itself, how things are going to work across the board, and when the time comes and it actually happens, that's when we'll actually get hands-on with this all for the first time ourselves. So lots to come in the next few days and weeks. Lots of content, reveals, updates are on the horizon. If you want to guarantee you're up to date with all of it, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. It would be really appreciated. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.